Namaskar. Hello and welcome to P Guru's channel. I'm your host Sri Iyer. I hope you have been watching some of the videos that we have been putting out. We've been rather busy. Yesterday there was a town hall meeting of Congressman Khanna, who happens to represent the Fremont district, and it is the same district from where the state senator Aisha Wahab has been trying to pilot the SB 403. Find out all about it, what happened, what kind of answers were given, what kind of questions were asked. All this available to you. This link is we're going to put the link in the description section so you can easily access it from this video itself. Right now, let's welcome our co-host Sridhar Chityalaji. Sridharji, namaskar and welcome to P Guru's channel.
Namaskar, good morning, and namaskara to everybody.
Sridharji, I have to tell you this before we go into the program. There are so many slips between the cup and the lip when you are covering something from the ground. It's just maddening. So I'll just leave it at that. Let's move on to today's news, sir. First off, IMF has given a very slow growth for the world in the next 12 months. Talk to us a little bit about it, the rise of Bitcoin, why that is happening, and a few other things that's happening while Finance Minister is in United States. That is your forte, sir. Take it away.
First and foremost, I think they clearly see headwinds, and inflation continues to pose a challenge, notwithstanding the fact that we saw some at least positive threads as we come into the show on the US inflation numbers, which reverberated in the rest of the world. So the growth, they expect growth from both in 2023 and 2024 to be tepid. So they have now cut the forecast for both 2023 and 2024. 2023, they just cut by 10 basis points, and so from 2.9 to 2.8. But far more important is the 3% that they're forecasting for 2024. So the world has to be cognizant, and the only game in town is going to be, countries such as India, which is going to drive and add to the aggregate GDP of the world. The aggregate GDP today is around $90 trillion. So that's on the IMF discussions that are going on. The second thing that you pointed out is it's quite astonishing that the finance minister is in. When I use the word astonishing, there's more than 300 delegates attending the event, where she was addressing the various members. Remember that India is the chair of the G20, and the G20 finance ministers were also at the meeting. It's an integrated session of World Bank, IMF, as well as the G20 finance ministers. I think she was very articulate in laying out what India has done and what India plans to do to mitigate all the challenges that are ahead, which prompted IMF to say that India is the big game in town as far as the global growth is concerned. So it's, I think, very positive momentum. But the most important thing that I want to say is that this is very significant that an Indian finance minister, as a chair of the G20, addressing and about 300 delegates ranging from CEOs and finance ministers attending the meet in Washington, D.C.
Yes, indeed. And back to my town hall meeting. You should look at the whole thing, viewers, because lots of tough questions were asked. And, being a politician, Congressman Khanna kind of sidestepped them and answered many questions also. So you need to understand how these things ebb and flow, and to understand how politicians in DC are thinking. From what Khanna tweets to what he responds in person, there's a slight difference. I would like you to watch it till the end to understand that. Sir, Bitcoin, 30,000 crossed again, and they are saying it will cross 100,000 by the end of next year. This is one prediction. They're even saying that one of the very bullish people said that it might even cross 1 million in 5 years' time. Sridharji, 100,000, I think I see it happening, maybe. But again, the shallowness, sir, it's not really widespread.
Well, I think we have covered this topic, and we received a lot of adverse criticism. And in fact, many pundits in social media channels said, well, Bitcoin is going to go away. And we have said this consistently, that it will remain. The prices will gyrate. That's just fact of life. And we have also laid out the case that 3% of the global assets, at peak, it can go to 5%. Anything between 2 to 5% will be allocated to alternate assets when there are, headwinds, and when there are issues around, either the interest rates climbing, currency rate issues, etc. So, uh, under the present circumstances, whenever there is an issue around economic growth, challenges around the dollar, challenges around the growth, the money naturally shifts to Bitcoin. So, therefore, this is one of the drivers. And Bitcoin, crypto is part of the kind of the commodities. You see the gold price rising. You see potentially the energy price being risen under the contrived mechanisms of OPEC plus. So you will also see Bitcoin as an alternate asset class being allocated capital whenever there is strife in the markets, Riji. And we have said this before, and we say this again.
We continue to say the same thing. Thank you, sir. And viewers, please like this video because we have a lot of India-centric news today, a lot happening in that part of the world, as well as what is happening in the Far East. So we're going to give you a lot of information. Would really help if you can like this video. We need a few more likes to get the YouTube viral engine to go crazy. I would like it to go crazy. Sridharji, Arunachal Pradesh. Amit Shah flew down to Arunachal and he said that we will not allow even 1 inch of space to be occupied. Now we are also hearing that India is getting real-time intelligence data from the United States so that in case there is something brewing in the Chinese kitchen about ambushing, India will have adequate time to prepare. That was proven last year in December 2022 when India got the right intel and they were really they pounded the heck out of the Chinese troops. Very little is being told about it. But long story short, Sridharji, India is getting a lot of help from US on this, and both sides are playing it down. Why, sir?
Well, I think that the anything which is to do with defense, anything which is to do with strategic information, which are sensitive from a military intelligence point of view, I think they will use it for the right purpose. There's nothing to do chest thumping and publicizing to the world. It also puts probably India in a disadvantageous or from a negotiating position point of view. So they want to receive the information on an as needed basis and act on it. By the way, we also covered in DGI and indicated the Matrix Group providing information on Coco Islands, where the Chinese workers were seen working with the connivance of the Myanmar government and building radar and surveillance center. That data was presented to the Myanmar government as provided by the United States with the satellite images. And, the Myanmar government denied. The fact that all this information is known, does put some element of deterrence on China that India is just not keeping quiet. It is well prepared and it has its allies in right places to provide the strategic input to tackle the Chinese.
And, with rising crude prices, will that impact India's growth? See, I'm hearing projections inside India from 6.1 to 6.3. Outside, I think World Bank has predicted India will grow at 5.9%. I mean, more or less in the same ballpark. The question I have for you, Sridharji, is when do you think crude price rise will hit India and the inflation will go up? Or is it already corrected now?
The India's inflation is being well controlled and seems to be well managed, predominantly because it has been able to get discounted oil prices at substantive discounted oil prices from the Russians. We showed the data in few days ago how the Russian supplies has dwindled from 44% to 4%, which is a strategic kind of from its strategic buyer, which is Europe. So they really need to find a venue, even if it is discounted, to get the cash coming in, not only to keep the economy going, but their war machine going. I mean, all is not going with war. They need money. So India has been very successfully negotiating and buying. By the way, Japan has also been allowed to buy the oil from the Russians as long as they don't use the ecosystem where the sanctions apply. So I feel that they will continue to cushion. They probably may be asked and allowed to buy even from Iran. They may use other nations, including UAE, who is a strategic supplier. So the question to me is right now, they seem to be managing on this 60% or 30% or 35% discount on a price band between $70 to $84 a barrel. They also are getting this specific category of oil which they're able to refine and also export and reduce the price in the process. What happens if this price goes past $100 or $110? Then I don't think India is going to be able to escape the inflation arising from this high price. Nobody expects it's likely to be. Right now, the futures are around $85 to $88. They are not yet nearing the $100, but it could happen.
Sridharji, not much is being talked about the fact that India is getting crude and then refining it and exporting it back to European countries. This could not be happening without the United States saying yes, because US cannot pick up the slack or the demand when it says that it will supply all the oil and natural gas to the West, that is to Europe. How much is this in terms of quantum, sir? Is that a growth prospect for India? Because I think India is the largest refinery in the world today.
Well, I think that it is certainly a growth prospect. We don't have enough data that is available to substantiate what is the percentage that is being domestically consumed and what is the percentage that is being shipped. Clearly, the arrangement with United States, and you are beginning to see whether some of the oil that is, remember, United States has occupied, we pointed that out to US today is the largest supplier of crude to Europe. We showed the chart. Less than 12 months, from February 2022 to today, they have moved up to close to 28% of the Europe supplies is being met by United States. Is some part of that is going from India United States to India to Europe? Don't know, but clearly there is these games at play. Whether it is being, I don't have data to point out, but we'll certainly investigate and let people know.
And India's mobile exports double, and much is being attributed to the success of the PLI program. We've been talking about the PLI program as one of the most successful initiatives of the Modi government for a long time now. Sridharji will touch upon that. Sridharji, Apple, iPhone, and Samsung exports are contributing close to $4 billion of US exports. That's an impressive number.
It is. I think they have quadrupled the number from $1 billion to about pentaplied $5 billion. Now exports is about $10 billion. The $10 billion, as you rightly pointed out, Apple and Samsung is making about $3.6 to $4 billion of that. So India has clearly, arrived as far as the mobile phones is concerned. It's the largest, one of the largest, second largest consumer, but it could very soon become one of the largest exporters if the present trend continues. Clearly, Apple has evinced and indicated interest to move a good part of the manufacturing, both for domestic consumption, fearing some of the sanctions that could hit China, as well as having augmentative capacity. So I think you will see India playing a big role. And all this is going to help, to mitigate to some extent the economic headwinds that the world is facing.
Also, viewers, we should keep in mind that if Apple starts manufacturing in India, Samsung starts manufacturing in India, India doesn't have the wherewithal to provide all the raw materials to make a cell phone. So India has to import from who else? China, the raw material. So that means India's imports will go up, at least in the short term, until India is able to indigenize all the imports and start producing it itself, so that first of all the price will go down of the iPhone and the Samsung phone. Second of all, it's the generation of jobs inside India itself. This takes time. I am wondering how much of the component of the import bill is because India is trying to rise as a manufacturing hub for things like mobile phone. So this is a number game. I think Sridharji and I will work on something and we'll come back to you, because we shouldn't keep on looking at everything and saying this is bad, that is bad. There are reasons why the import bill from China is probably going up. Sridharji, your thought before we go to the next topic, sir.
Well, I think that is very true. The import substitution is going on. There's no doubt about it. But some of the imports continue. As far as the rising exports, especially around the manufacturing, there are drivers that will contribute towards the import side until substitution occurs. But some of these may also be what you call correlatory effects, because some of these spare parts may be coming from Samsung as well as Apple, who in turn are importing this from the Chinese because their supply chain is not fully decoupled from China as yet. It may in due course, but not yet. All of this does contribute, as you rightly point out, Sriji, towards the rising import bill.
Yes, sir. And now let's take a quick look at something else. India dismisses reports of suspending free trade agreement talks with UK over Sikh extremism. Ukraine's deputy foreign minister on Monday said Kiev wanted New Delhi to be more involved in helping resolve its conflict with Russia. She's also sought a visit by Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and other top officials. Please take it away, sir.
Well, I think that it just again shows that who is the most trusted player in the world right now. Clearly, India is emerging as one of the most trusted players, and the thought was not lost on them to visit India by the deputy minister. She has made three specific requests: one, for Modi ji to visit, Indian Prime Minister to visit Ukraine; second, whether Zelensky can be invited to address the G20 meet because India is the chair. And the third, she said that many of our infrastructure around the oil refineries are damaged, and India has the wherewithal to come and be supportive to see whether some of those things can be fixed. Remember, India also imports some fertilizers and inert gases from Ukraine. So this is all positive and shows and demonstrates India's leadership as a trusted leader and arbitrator.
Sridharji, I also noticed that the Deputy Foreign Minister is pretty dharmic. She talked about being at an ashram in India. She actually quoted from scriptures. Some of them sounded like she must be watching DGI even, because there were some, sound bites that looked very similar to what we have used in the past.
Well, I think that'll be good if she has used the sound bites. But I think we have mentioned this before. There's a significant number of Ukrainians who follow the Sri Krishna movement, and a lot of them even have names such as Radha, and so there is a considerable element of the Dharmic aspect within Ukraine. So it's natural that some of these flows through when these people come. Why they didn't come before and why they're coming now? Because they probably went astray and they feel that, okay, let's come and talk to India because it would probably make sense. And India also has the trust of the Russians, much more than I would say the Chinese, because India has a long association with the Russians. That probably what prompted her to come and say, okay, can we do something about it?
Yes, indeed. And US is now doing war games with Philippines. We have a picture for you, a graphic for you. Sridharji will explain to us what is going on. Sridharji, go ahead, sir.
Yes, 4 new bases. If you recall, we covered this in a couple of days ago, but we just wanted to point the picture. So there is the Camillo Oasis basis in what we call as the Cagayan region. There's 2 bases there, and the Lalo airport, and then there's also at the Isabela, which is little further south. Now, why these 3 new bases are important? These 3 new bases are important because they face Taiwan. They're only about less than 400, especially the Camillo Oasis basis is less than. OCS basis is less than 400 kilometers. Notwithstanding the fact Mr. Marcos has stated that no offensive position stands will be taken, but it does give United States a very strong foothold should things happen in Taiwan. Now, coming to the 4th one, which is new, if you remember the Palawan region that was visited by the Vice President of United States, Kamala Harris. She flew and met with some of the people in the island, and then she flew out. This is again very close to Spratly Islands, which is contested by Philippines and China in the South China Sea. It's called as the Balabac Island base, and that gives access to United States in terms of keeping a track as to what is happening in South China Sea. These are new locations. This was renegotiated or negotiated, which was kept pending from the previous regime, and Marcos has signed. Is very, very strategic, and they've recently conducted drills using all the 10 bases in Philippines. This is US Philippines.
Sridharji, I see a certain amount of dialing down by China over its saber rattling, as well as now it's beginning to talk to South Asian nations, ASEAN nations, saying talk less and less rhetoric and so on. I see a slight shift in stance of China. I'm wondering if China now realizes that it may never get back to the growth path it had previous to the COVID incident. I'm just guessing here, but viewers, you should watch Elmer Yuan's video conversation with me. That will air about an hour from now. Do watch it, because there is something else happening inside China. That's what Elmer feels, and we are going to give you that video shortly. Sridharji, do you sense that, sir? Because even today's news, I see that now suddenly China is playing a slightly different tune.
China has four major issues. I'll let Mr. Elmer Yuan cover from his perspective, at least from the perspective of some of the people that I speak with. There are four major issues that China is facing inside. They have not fully recovered from COVID. So there is still economic catastrophe within China. That's number one. Number two, they have got very heavy losses because of impaired credit, which is affecting their industry. That is number two. Number three, which is even equally important, that they have faced the backlash of the sanctions. And so the economy, there's no consumption domestically, plus the exports are slowing down. So this is also creating an economic catastrophe. Fourth, many of these nations, with many of the ASEAN nations and other nations, with the saber rattling that China has been engaged in, especially after Emperor Xi took over the full power, they are beginning to get a lot of pushback, which is to say that should this war break out, it is nothing but it is going to be catastrophe for the Chinese is concerned. So all this feedback is going back into Mr. Xi Jinping. He has also met with the CEOs and various leaders, most recently, including from United States. And the shift of Apple is a very significant issue for him from China to India. It's a very big issue for him.
And this is one of the aspects that Elmer deals with at length. For example, the real estate was contributing between 30 to 35% of China's GDP. Guess where it is today? Find out these data by watching Elmer Yuan's video. He's basically echoing what Sridharji is saying, except that we are taking a couple more steps into the whole problem, because it'll give you an idea when, if any, China will be able to come out of it. So just do watch that program. I know I'm kind of pitching the other program, because the thing is, we are giving you one extended narrative of various things that's happening, bringing in experts, being on the ground. So I just want you to understand that we, as a responsible YouTube blogger, we want to give you everything with different perspectives sometimes. Not every expert that comes on our channel may agree with what the previous expert said, but that's the whole idea. That's the idea, is to educate you. So you understand that, okay, there are two sides to this story, and let me see which is right and which is wrong. So that is the idea here. Thank you so much, Sridharji. And now let's take a look at Russia's claims over Bakhmut. They say that they have occupied 75% of Bakhmut. I think Ukraine begs to differ. I mean, there is no clear-cut victory or loss at this point of time, as I see it, sir. This is becoming a battle of attrition, in my opinion. The private force that Russia was using, called Wagner, is the one that is heading this Bakhmut thing, I'm told. Can you walk us through what is happening, why this Bakhmut is so important for both sides?
It's very important within the context of taking over the East. So the Eastern Front, the Donetsk and the Luhansk region, this Bakhmut battle is very critical. And if they win this battle, and it's just a straight walkthrough as far as the eastern region is concerned, and then that will, from there, they will flow through into Crimea. So there are two major fronts that Ukraine, two major offensive that Ukraine is contemplating to launch. One is in Crimea, which Russia says it is prepared, and second is the entrenched battle that is taking place, and supply lines are disrupted. The Russian supply lines are disrupted to Bakhmut region, which is what Wagner Group has pointed out. And there's also tensions between the Russian generals as well as this private army, which is all slowing down. And any slowing down implies cost, cost, cost. And if Russia doesn't play this private army, they're not going to fight. So this is another issue that the Wagner Group has pointed out, which is namely their payments. So all this is bogging them down, and it remains to be seen as to whether the major offensive that Ukraine is contemplating will bring about a decisive victory in Bakhmut, and in the process thwart the Russian move into the eastern region.
Sridharji, talk to us a little bit about the probe of the leak of sensitive documents from the United States on the Ukraine war plans. Why does this concern countries like Australia, sir?
It concerns because the reason is there's a lot of information that has to come out, and much of that information is slowly trickling out. For example, apparently CIA has been monitoring the dialogue that's taking place within Korea, especially the leadership, and that information was leaked out. Apparently, Egypt is a big ally of United States. That Egypt has got factories building arms for feeding the Russians. That's number two. Number three, even UAE is somehow entangled with Russia, and so therefore that information has come out. And fourth, which is far more, how exactly NATO and United States will feed into the supply lines as well as the battle plans, which means all the allies within allies of United States within NATO are also impacted if all this data is coming out of papers from United States Defense Department. So who is behind it? You can guess, and your guess is as good as mine, and at the most sensitive time. We have only seen initial bits. There's apparently more to come.
Yes, indeed. And viewers, there is something strange about this whole thing. For the longest time, when the Republicans were in power, they were talking about how the vice president of United States was actually the CEO of Halliburton Energy, which was a big supplier of energy equipment, drilling, what have you. They also happened to have a private army fit who got a lot of contracts when he was a vice president, when US was in Iraq. Now, look at who is the defense secretary. What was he before that? He was on the board of Raytheon, one of the biggest military manufacturers for US. And guess what happened? He comes on board, and then there is this Ukraine war. Who's manufacturing overtime? In United States. They are, the factories that are doing all these weapons armaments is at full tilt right now. So what I'm trying to say is it doesn't seem to matter whether it is the Democrats or the Republicans. There are vested interests. These vested interests will give you some small crumbs of bread, and then they extract multifold. My read on this situation, Sridharji, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
I think that there's no doubt about whenever there is a war, the war machinery and the industry benefits. But I have a feeling we'll probably, in few DGIs, we will probably uncover more and report. But there's something more than meets the eye as far as the Russia-Ukraine is concerned. Besides, we covered one part of it. The energy group that is within Ukraine has the Lithuanian Prime Minister and as well as Mr. Hunter Biden involved in that specific group. There's been stories around the biolabs in Ukraine. And there's also been why this whole region was quiet and during the Trump years, and Biden comes over, and you have all kinds of issues flare up, especially around NATO getting active and unnecessarily dragging Russia into this war and disrupting and creating a problem not only to Europe but to rest of the world. So there's more than meets the eye. We are just picking up because we just want to be very careful as to what kind of information we present before you all. And once we have done enough research, we can give some of the insights as to what is driving this war very clearly, that it is not just occupation of territory.
Now, there's also some interesting things happening outside of this, which was the Supreme Court's decision to overturn more or less Roe v. Wade, and this is now being fought out in every state legislature. Sridharji, talk to us a little bit about what is happening in Texas, the judge's ruling, and how it affects people, sir. Let's set aside my opinion on this. Talk to us. What is happening, sir?
Basically, Texas have banned or temporarily suspended sale of the CDC approved anti-abortion pill. That in turn, has triggered a whole slew of issues and brought all the Democrats to come together and say, we'll fight the election. How can you ban, or how can you even suspend temporarily, without rhyme or rhythm, because you believe in one version of the world as opposed to taking precedence from the Supreme Court decision. Supreme Court did not ban. Supreme Court basically effectively stated that the choice is left with the states as to how they will implement the decision, rather than mandating it as a Supreme Court directive to all the states. Each state may follow its own principle. And so that is what the Supreme Court decision was. So you have all the Democratic states lining up and basically saying, we'll fly people, we will increase the supply of the abortion pills. Even if Texas decides to permanently ban, you can come over to the states. So this is very much, we are back to pro-life, pro-choice battle. Texas believes in one way, some of the other states believe in the other way. So let us see how this plays out, Sriji. But it is purely what you call as a religious philosophical battle between one set of people and the other set of people.
Thank you very much, sir. And now, if you don't mind, let's take a few questions, Sridharji. Maybe if you could limit your answers to 1 minute per answer, that'll be great, because I'd like to take 4 or 5 questions. Let's start the questions, please. Rahul Rathod wants to know, by 2030, can China overtake US in GDP, and by when India could achieve 5 trillion GDP? Why India is unable to achieve targeted 25% GDP from manufacturing sector even after PLI schemes?
China will overtake US, I think, by 2027, 2028. China will overtake. This is nominal GDP. As far as PPP is concerned, China is already ahead of United States. As far as the Indian GDP is 5 trillion is concerned, it is very much around the 26, 27 trajectory. It would have got by 26, but for the contraction that took place during COVID, and then of course it recovered out of the COVID. As far as the achieve the target of 25% of, I don't know, I think India manufacturing is close to 30 to 34% of GDP. It's not 25% of GDP. It's like 50 to 55% comes from services sector, close to about 14%, 14 to 15% comes from the agricultural sector. Rest of it is manufacturing. The growth trajectory will improve, because much of it takes about 3 to 5 years. These PLI programs don't kind of kick in and you don't have improvement from day one.
It's not a switch.
It's not a switch. It takes about 3 to 5 years, and you will find the manufacturing sector grow because of the PLI programs. And also the shift takes place in slow phases. Obviously, mobile is one, defense manufacturing is one, pharmaceutical is one, refining is one. You have seen consumer electronics industries is another segment that you have seen, like air conditioners and refrigerators, etc., moving back to, even light bulbs moving back into India. So you will see growth coming over the next 3 to 4 years.
Sridharji, I saw a comment in one of the videos, and this is a gentleman who lives in deep south in a place called Mailadurai. It is one of those less used railway lines, and he said that there is constant traffic of goods trains going from north to Cochin, from where a lot of grains are getting exported. Nobody has mentioned anything about this, but this is the information we are getting from the ground. India is starting to export grains in a big way, and again, the harvest is expected to be fine. The rain for this year is supposed to be normal. So a lot of other things are also happening. Anything and everything is going to help to that $5 trillion mark. Who knows if there's a commodities price shortage that can be attained even faster. So all I'm trying to say is there are lots of things happening. Now let's go on to the next question, please. Oh, how's it going? When do you think India's Sensex will get decoupled from Nasdaq or Dow Jones?
Sensex, in my humble view, Sensex is decoupled from Nasdaq or Dow Jones. But what had Dow Jones? Sentiments play a part. The sentiments are global because a good chunk of money comes from overseas markets. I think Sensex is very much driven by what is happening within the domestic markets. The U.S. markets, I mean, the Indian markets have done relatively better compared to Dow Jones.
How's it going? You have to understand that the SEBI organization is totally incompetent. They have given a clean check to Times of India, about whom we have written tomes about how they have evaded taxes. They've done a whole bunch of other stuff. You look at all the media companies, NDTV, slap on the wrist, if that. Bloomberg Quint, again, go, go, go. And now Times of India gets a clean check. Is Adani going to be acquiring Times of India? I don't know. But what I see is these are all things where some of the regulators are not doing their job. Next, sir. Partha P, do you see an expanse of currencies in the IMF special drawing rights as a transition to accommodate the rise of the Asian Monetary Fund?
When I look at the currencies within, the global currencies, the G7 countries make up about 95%. 2% is China, and about 3.5% is rest of the world. On the SDR, special drawing rights, I think that they may not alter the course, but if any willing nation is prepared to step up, then they will be willing to kind of accommodate. That is within the constitutional structure of IMF and World Bank. For example, until recently, China was actually drawing and deriving benefit and calling itself as a developing nation, until China was told, I'm sorry, you are the second largest economy. You are not a developing nation. You should not be drawing funds from here for your projects. You have enough money in your bank account to do it. So I think they will accommodate or they will allow, but there is a very finely defined structure. I think today there is about $960 billion of SDR, which they have been deploying. For example, Sri Lanka is a beneficiary. Some of the African nations are a beneficiary. The capital got allocated. So I think that we have been speaking of the rise of the Asian Monetary Fund, but one has to ask the question, how much of it has flown in the last few years in developing? If Asia Monetary Fund exists, why did you start some China or BRICS Development Bank? Why did you stop all these other institutions conflicting with some? So Asia has to get its act together, which route it wants to choose. Already within ASEAN, there's a very well-developed mechanism. There's also well-developed mechanism that they can use IMF to draw. The Asia Development Bank, which is augmentative to World Bank and IMF, has also been providing support to some of the Asian nations. So it's all operating within an existing umbrella, and there's nothing that IMF needs to do to change its course unless somebody presents something interesting.
Last question, please. Jagannath Das wants to know, what is the new CNG plan government introduced, to whom it will be helpful? They say it will get 10% price.
I don't have an answer to this question, Shriji, unless you have.
Yeah,
You have
I'll give a quick answer to that. Jagannath, what is happening is now cities like Chennai are going to get gas on like a pipe, just like a water you get on a pipe. You're going to get gas on a pipe. Now this reduces distribution costs. It also reduces, the LNG bottling, the cylinder that you have to put all that stuff. All that prices go down. The control is in one place. As long as you manage the lines properly, it will be great. Mumbai has had it for many years. Some portions of Mumbai do get their gas connection just like a pipe. There's a meter. Just like you consume water or electricity, you also consume gas. So this is what India is trying to do. Once it starts putting them down in some of the bigger cities, you will start seeing the overheads come down dramatically. Everywhere they are squeezing out the inefficiencies, and that is something that we have to admit, that we have to tip our hat to the government. Modi government has been trying to find out every place wherever there is inefficiencies. Let's go take a hammer to it and try to fix that thing. Thank you very much, Sridharji. We'll be back again on Saturday, and we are going to do it 2 times a week. We really need your support, viewers. We are there where we are expecting 25,000 views per episode. Sridharji has spent hours trying to put together this data because a lot of research goes into it, and we are still crossing barely 10 to 12,000 mark. We really need to up that thing. Please share this thing to your friends and viewers, and also follow us on P Gurus 1, Sri Iyer 1, and S Chityala. Twitter is the best way to understand where things are happening. When we don't have daily DGI, we are having a lot of stories coming out. Sridharji also puts out a lot of stories. Do follow us on Twitter. Sridharji, namaskar, and we'll see you on Saturday, sir.
Namaskar, and have a wonderful evening, a wonderful day.